It started with an ache that wouldn't go away, a kind of hollow silence that followed me everywhere I went. I would laugh with friends, nod through conversations, smile when expected, but deep inside I felt something missing, like the world had gone dim. Losing someone changes you in ways you can't explain. You go through the motions, but a part of your soul is always somewhere else, reaching, searching for what's no longer here. I used to pray every night, asking God for comfort, for peace, but one night something different happened. I didn't want comfort anymore. I wanted truth. It was late, almost midnight, when I finally said it out loud. The room was dark, only a faint glow from the streetlight creeping through the curtains. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching a photograph that had started to fade around the edges. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from desperation. I whispered, "God, what really happens when we die?" The words trembled out of me like a confession, raw and real. I wasn't asking for some poetic answer or a comforting image of angels and clouds. I just wanted to know, were they still out there? Could they see me? Could they feel how much I missed them? For a moment, I half expected something dramatic to happen, a flicker of light, a sudden breeze, some sign that heaven had heard me. But nothing moved. The air was still, the silence thick. And in that silence, my heart began to break open in ways I hadn't let it before. I realized how much I'd been running from grief, from fear, from the mystery that none of us can escape. Asking God the question wasn't about doubting Him. It was about daring to be honest. I didn't want the religious answers I'd grown up hearing. I wanted the real, living voice of God to speak to me, to tell me something only He could, something I could hold on to when the nights got too long and the memories too heavy. That moment, sitting there in the quiet, was the beginning of something I didn't understand yet, a kind of divine conversation that would change everything. When I asked God my question, I expected an answer, a sign, a word that would make the ache inside me stop echoing. But instead, what I received was silence. Not an empty silence, but one that felt alive, as if something sacred was moving beneath it. At first, I was frustrated. I thought maybe God hadn't heard me, or worse, that He didn't want to answer. I waited, listening to the hum of the night, the faint ticking of the clock, the slow rhythm of my own breath. Every sound felt louder, and yet it all pointed back to the same thing, quiet. I whispered again, a little louder this time, "Please just tell me." Still nothing, and that nothing began to feel heavier with every second that passed. But as I sat there in the dark, something began to shift inside me. The silence stopped feeling like absence and started feeling like presence. It wasn't that God wasn't answering. It was that He was speaking in a language I wasn't used to hearing. I'd spent my whole life filling silence with noise, with prayers, with explanations, with distractions, and now, for the first time, I was being asked to simply listen. Not for words, but for something deeper. I began to notice the way my heart felt, calm yet awake, heavy yet strangely at peace. There was a stillness that wrapped around me like an invisible blanket, and in that stillness, I could feel something real. I thought about how, when someone we love sits quietly beside us, they don't have to say a thing for us to feel their care. Maybe that's what God was doing. Maybe His silence wasn't punishment or distance, but closeness too deep for sound. In that moment, I started to understand that not every answer comes in the form of language. Some answers come as presence, a presence that whispers through the quiet, "I'm here." I began to see how silence itself could be holy, how it could hold truth that words might only weaken. It was the kind of silence that doesn't demand understanding, but invites surrender, the kind that doesn't explain God, but lets you feel Him. As I sat there, wrapped in that sacred stillness, I began to feel something strange, something that didn't belong to the world I knew. It wasn't a vision in the way people imagine, with golden light or angelic music. It was subtle, like the air itself shifted and carried a softness I had never known before. It was as if the walls disappeared, as if the space around me expanded into something infinite, something gentle yet powerful. In that quiet expanse, I didn't see heaven, I felt it. Not a place far away in the clouds, but a presence that was already here, already alive within everything breathing, everything moving. It was as if the line between earth and eternity had faded until they became one. I realized that maybe heaven isn't something we go to after we die. Maybe it's something we start entering while we're still alive, every time we love deeply, forgive honestly, or choose peace over pride. In that moment, I felt surrounded by warmth, by the energy of every soul that ever lived. I could almost sense the one I'd lost, not standing before me, but flowing through me. It wasn't their face or their voice, but a knowing, a quiet assurance that they were okay, that they hadn't gone anywhere at all. The love that once lived in them hadn't vanished. It had simply changed form. That realization made me see how connected everything truly is. Life and death aren't two separate doors. They're the same passage, one seen from different sides. The more I sat in that awareness, the more I understood that what we call death isn't an ending, it's a returning. And maybe in God's eyes, nothing ever truly dies. The laughter, the love, the moments we thought were lost forever. They live on not in some faraway heaven, but in the quiet corners of every heartbeat that still remembers. That night taught me that heaven isn't waiting for us somewhere beyond the stars. It's right here, hidden inside the way we live, the way we love, the way we let go. In the days that followed that night, something in me began to shift. I stopped looking for answers in the sky and started noticing the ones written quietly into my everyday life. I began to see that God's message wasn't about death at all. It was about living. It was about how easily we drift through life half asleep, waiting for heaven later, while missing the sacred moments right in front of us. I realized that I had spent so much time fearing the end that I had forgotten to fully embrace the middle. The silence that once scared me now reminded me to be still long enough to feel life pulsing through me, to breathe in gratitude instead of grief. I started paying attention to the small things, the warmth of the morning sun on my skin, the laughter that came from a friend's joke, the way a child's eyes light up over something simple. Every one of those moments felt like God speaking again, not in thunder, but in whispers of wonder. It was as though He was teaching me that eternal life doesn't begin when we die. It begins the moment we start living with purpose, with awareness, with love that stretches beyond ourselves. I learned that the best way to honor those who have left us is to live the kind of life that keeps their love alive, through kindness, through courage, through joy. The more I leaned into that truth, the more I understood that living fully doesn't mean chasing perfection. It means being present, being real, being grateful for the fragile beauty of every heartbeat. It means understanding that every moment is borrowed and sacred. That time isn't something to be feared, but something to be filled with meaning. God's quiet answer taught me that the way we live shapes what comes after, that every act of love builds a bridge between earth and eternity, and that heaven is not just a destination, but a way of being that starts here, in the choices we make, in the grace we give, and in the courage to love even when it hurts. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I began to understand that God's answer wasn't just meant to comfort me. It was meant to awaken me. The truth I found wasn't about where we go after death, but about how we prepare for it while we live. I realized that what happens after we die is a reflection of how deeply we have loved while we were alive. Every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, every time we choose compassion over anger, it all leaves an imprint that doesn't fade when our bodies do. Love. I understood is the only thing strong enough to cross the boundary between this world and the next. It's the one language both heaven and earth speak fluently. I began to see that the people who leave us don't disappear. They live on in the love they've given, the lessons they've taught, the lives they've touched. And in that same way, we are writing our own eternal story with every breath we take. We decide moment by moment what we will carry with us beyond this life. It isn't our possessions or our titles, not our fame or our fears. It's the love we have given and received. That is the true measure of a life, and that is the truth that sets the soul free. When I thought back to the silence that once felt empty, I realized it had been full of this message all along. God hadn't told me what happens after death because He wanted me to understand that the answer was already within me. It was in how I loved, how I forgave, how I showed up for others. Heaven, I realized, isn't something waiting far away. It's what we build through the way we love right here. The more we love, the more heaven we bring into the world. The more we give, the lighter our soul becomes, until one day, when we finally cross that invisible line between life and eternity, we'll find that we've already been walking in heaven's light all along.